I want to say something really motivational today, which is motivation is nonsense. Controversial enough? So motivational is nonsense because of one very simple factor. It's very high maintenance. What do I mean by this? When you get motivation from somewhere else, you will feel empowered, you'll feel validated, like all those things that you think you're not worthy of. Someone is telling you that you are, and that's great. But there's a couple of problems here. So, for example, there's several guided meditations out there, so-called I am based meditations. So it basically gives you this internal speech of I am worthy, I am a good person, I am deserving of wealth, I am. So at face value, this sounds like a good idea, right? Like you're turning your internal talk from negative to positive by empowering yourself. And that's not a bad thing. The problem is that when not done properly, those I am thoughts are literally the genesis of an egotistical and egoic persona. The ego is basically literally that, right? Like you have all these thoughts that have your I, your sense of self, attached to a thought, and that becomes an ego. It's a character. Like you don't feel like you're that person, but you'll convince yourself by a repetition, and therefore you become that person. Sort of like faking it until you make it, which ego is really good at. But the problem is that making it doesn't necessarily translate to becoming it. You can create a sequence of events that leads to a positive outcome without you feeling positive about it. It's not unusual for a lot of successful people to feel highly depressed. Well, why is that? Because they were driven by ego, not a belief in self and not an awareness of what your goals are, but rather like what someone else's goals are for you. And that someone else could be society, for all we care. So I would be very careful with those I am meditations. So how do you override that? How do you turn a negative mindset into a positive mindset without the creation of an overly inflated ego? Well, it starts with actual self-awareness. And self-awareness is a very cliche term used nowadays, that is also used in a very egoic way. A lot of people claim self-awareness and they claim honesty when really what they're saying is, I'll say whatever I want. I don't even have to believe it as long as it keeps my enemies at bay. Sometimes those enemies are their own thoughts, though, and their own awareness and their own understanding of themselves. Those are the so-called enemies. They don't want to confront that pain, so they come up with this persona who's honest and brutal, and I'll just call it as I see it. I should know because I acted like that for decades in my life. I was aggressive, I was honest, and sometimes, the thing is that sometimes I was saying things that were valid, but I was choosing the most brutal form to communicate those ideas in order to validate myself by a force. And that's an egoic posture. So it starts with self-awareness. You want to really transition into a positive mindset and really understand what you're worthy of. You don't convince yourself that you're worthy. You make yourself worthy. So you don't say to yourself, I am worthy of more money. No, you got to ask questions, not statements. You have to feel yourself slightly confused and lost, because confusion raises questions and aggression just raises walls, right? If you walk around with all this aggressive certainty that I know I deserve it, I know I should have that, I know I'm a good person. But whenever I say I know I'm a good person, I smirk. Because it's such a complicated statement, actually. Because when you say, I know I'm a good person, you're making an assessment of yourself that should only be judged by others, And almost immediately saying I'm a good person is the antidote to being a good person. Continuing the idea of how you transition from a negative mindset to a positive mindset without activating the ego, you have to ask yourself, what is it that I'm not doing that is good enough? Assess the mistakes. Well, look, the good things are already there. So the way you move forward is by constantly looking for the issues, for the mistakes, for the things that need work and tweaking. Refuse the ideas of virtue such as, I'm such a great person and I'm super honest. No, you're not always. You're not always a good person. You're not always judgment free. In fact, you want to be judgmental to an extent because that protects you. It's adaptive. People judge each other and they have prejudice towards each other because there's an adaptive and survival based mechanism attached to that. I judge my surroundings, and that includes the people in those surroundings, because it keeps me safe. No, I might be wrong, and sometimes I might realize, like, okay, I kind of fell into an unconscious bias there, which we all have. I acknowledge that too. And you can work on that. But you don't want to be claiming to be judgment free, because you can't be. And what you can't be, should you even try to become? And you might just be creating a persona, an egoic persona, that convinces itself of being judgment free and therefore being very judgmental and out of control judgmental, because there's this layer in front of it stopping you from seeing how judgmental you are. You might as well see it and say, I am judgmental, yeah? I judge people who don't fulfill their potential out of laziness or out of justifiable difficulties, but I do judge them. Now, do I want to just put them down? No. Do I want to help them? Yes. Is it my job to help them though? Or is that also my ego kicking in? And these are the questions that will lead to answers, and you'll have to test things, and you'll have to adjust, and you'll have to run experiments. But the reality is that motivation in itself is a self-fulfilling prophecy that you just I convince myself of X, Y, and Z, and therefore that's going to happen. It's rubbish. You have to ask yourself, what am I not doing that's stopping me from being worthy of that? Because trust me, if you don't have it, it's because you don't deserve it. It is what it is. And a lot of people hate these words. They despise them. They feel so uncomfortable. But the reality is that where I'm at today, at all levels, relationship-wise, professionally, financially, it's because I'm exactly where I should be. The world doesn't owe me anything. So, who owes me something? Me. Right? I owe something to my future self. So I need to, do the things. And when it's not happening for me, I need to ask myself, okay, what am I not doing? And then, when you develop that notion of my self-worth will come from results, not the other way around, then I believe that your positive mindset will be justifiable and most likely pretty low maintenance. You'll accept that you'll still have bad negative days, and that's fine. Just take action, take the steps, and keep walking.